He missed the first biggest interview of his life because he stopped to help an old man change a tire in the pouring rain. No cameras, no witnesses, just a quiet decision, born from kindness and the words of a father he lost too soon. If you ever see someone with that patch, you help them, no matter what. He thought he'd lost everything that morning. But what he didn't know was that the man he helped wasn't just any stranger, and the door he thought had closed forever. It was just the beginning. Welcome to Grateful Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness are told. Let's uncover what really happened. Charlotte, North Carolina, early spring, the kind of morning where the clouds feel heavy, like they've been waiting all night to break open. Eli Walker stood by the mirror in his modest apartment, adjusting his tie for the fifth time. He didn't usually wear ties, but today wasn't usual. Today was everything. He took a step back and looked at himself in navy suit, white shirt, shoes polished until they caught the light. He looked sharp, but even so, he could feel it. That small tremor of nerves in his hands, the quick, shallow breaths he tried to slow down. 24 years old, no connections, no fancy last name, just a dream and a shot. For 3 months, he had worked double shifts at the corner cafe, brewing coffee and stacking chairs long after midnight. Every dollar he saved went into the suit he was wearing, and the leather portfolio he now held like it contained his future. Inside were his resumes, letters of recommendation, and a market analysis he'd written himself. Emerging economies in Southeast Asia, Eli believed in it, and he hoped someone else would too. The company he was interviewing for Hayes Capital Group was one of the biggest names in Charlotte. They rarely hired outside Ivy League circles, but somehow, his application had made it through. It was a long shot, but it was his shot. Eli glanced at the clock. 7:52 a.m. The interview was at 9:30. He planned to get there before 8:45. Plenty of time, he thought, just enough to settle his nerves, run through his talking points, and breathe. He slipped on his coat, slid the portfolio into a waterproof sleeve, and took one last look at his apartment. It was small, tight, the kind of place where the bathroom door didn't close all the way. But it had been home these last 4 years. Now, he hoped, maybe soon, he'd outgrow it, he whispered under his breath. "Let's go," and stepped into the hallway. By the time he reached the subway exit uptown, the rain had begun. At first, it was light, gentle, then it wasn't. Within 5 minutes, the skies cracked open. The streets shimmered with pooling water. Umbrellas turned inside out. Horns blared as traffic came to a crawl. Eli pulled his coat tighter and broke into a light jog. His shoes splashed through the growing puddles as he weaved between strangers darting for cover. 8:14 a.m. Still okay, he told himself. The plan had been to walk the last 6 blocks to Hayes Tower. But this was no regular rain. It was a full-on Carolina spring storm, unexpected and merciless. He ducked under the awning of a closed newsstand and opened his rideshare app. Nothing. All the cars were booked or offline. He refreshed. Again. And again. Still nothing. He tried the taxi app. No better luck. 8:23. He stepped back out into the storm. His hair, carefully combed just an hour ago, flattened against his scalp. His dress pants soaked through, and every gust of wind seemed to cut straight through his coat. Still, he pushed forward, block after block. At 8:37, he stopped at the corner of Tryon and Fifth. He could see Hayes Tower now tall and gleaming in the distance, behind the gray curtain of rain. That was when he heard it. A voice, faint, raspy, somewhere just beyond the curb. "Dang thing won't budge." Eli looked right, then left. Then he saw it. An old black sedan parked crooked near the sidewalk, hazard lights blinking, and beside it, hunched low and struggling with a car jack, was an old man, late 70s, maybe early 80s. His overcoat was soaked through. His hands trembled as he fumbled with the rusted jack beneath the front tire. Eli's first instinct was to keep going, just keep moving. He was already behind, but something made him stop. It wasn't the car. It wasn't the rain. It wasn't even the man's age. It was the patch. Worn, faded, but still visible on the left sleeve of the old man's coat. An eagle, a globe, an anchor. United States Marine Corps. Eli froze. For a moment, he didn't hear the rain or feel the cold. He only heard a voice, his father's voice. If one day you see a man wearing that symbol and he needs help, you help him. Doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter what it costs. His father, Lance Corporal David Walker, had served in the Marines. He never talked much about it, only that Vietnam had left scars no one could see. Eli was 14 when he passed, but that one sentence had stayed with him like gospel. Eli glanced down the street. Hayes Tower still loomed in the distance. He looked back at the old man, still struggling, still alone. People were walking past. No one stopped. No one even looked. Eli sighed. He stepped off the curb and into the water. "Sir," he called out, jogging over. "You need a hand." The old man looked up, startled. He had pale blue eyes, thin as glass. His face was lined with age and exhaustion. Rain dripped from his brow, mixing with the mud on his coat. "Jack's stuck," he muttered, frustrated. "I thought I could manage it myself, but—" He shook his head. Eli knelt beside the wheel, setting his portfolio carefully inside the back seat of the sedan. "You shouldn't be out here alone," Eli said gently. "Storm caught me off guard," the man replied. "My driver's off today. Thought I'd take myself to my doctor's appointment." He chuckled, bitterly. "Stubborn old fool." "Huh," Eli gave a soft smile. "No, sir, just proud." He took off his coat, laid it on the wet pavement, and lowered himself to the ground. The wheel was jammed in tight, but Eli had worked summers at his uncle's garage back in high school. He knew what to do. As he worked, the old man watched. "You headed somewhere?" he asked. Eli hesitated. "Yeah, an interview." The man whistled softly. "Big day." "Yeah, kind of the biggest. And yet here you are," the man murmured. Eli didn't answer. He just kept working. After a few minutes, the jack clicked into place. The flat tire came off. The spare went on. By the time it was done, Eli's white shirt was see-through from the rain. His hands were black with grease. 9:06 a.m. He was officially late, but strangely, he felt calm. The old man clapped him on the back. "You've got good hands, or son." "Real steady." Eli nodded. "Learned from my uncle." He said, "A man should know how to help when no one else does." The veteran smiled. Then, slowly, his expression shifted like something clicked behind his eyes. "Do me one favor," the old man said, walking around to the driver's side. "Let me give you a ride." Eli hesitated. He looked down at his soaked pants, his ruined appearance. He knew there wasn't much point anymore. But something in the old man's voice told him to say yes. So he did. As they pulled away from the curb, neither of them noticed the small American flag pin that had come loose from the old man's collar and fallen onto the sidewalk behind them. It would stay there all day, quiet, forgotten, except by the man who'd stopped when no one else did. The old man's hands were shaking. Eli noticed it the moment he got closer. Franklin Hayes was struggling, not just with the jack, but with age. The kind of trembling that doesn't stop with effort. It's deep, permanent, familiar. He'd seen it before, in his father's hands, toward the end. Eli crouched lower, his knees pressing into the soaked asphalt. Rainwater crept into his socks. The chill bit at his spine, but he ignored it. He reached under the sedan and repositioned the jack, this time correctly. Franklin watched him quietly. "You know what you're doing," he said, voice hoarse but steady. Eli offered a small smile, wiping mud from the wrench. "Summer job at my uncle's garage back in Greensboro. Didn't think it would come in handy today." The old man gave a soft chuckle. "Most useful things rarely announce themselves." He leaned against the car, catching his breath. "I'm Franklin. By the way, Franklin Hayes." Eli paused. That name Hayes sounded faintly familiar, but he didn't connect it yet. Eli Walker, he said, nodding. You sure you're okay? Sir, you're soaked. Franklin gave a slight shrug. I've seen worse storms, though maybe not this kind. He pulled his coat tighter, the Marine Corps patch still visible beneath the fold. Eli tightened the bolts on the spare tire, steady and deliberate. His hands worked through rain and grime like he wasn't even thinking about it. But inside, his mind was screaming. It's 9:08. You're not going to make it. The building was still 4 blocks away. He was soaked, late, and looked like a man who'd fallen in a ditch. And still, he didn't move faster, didn't rush, because Franklin Hayes needed help. And something about him commanded respect. They stood in silence as Eli packed up the tools. Franklin glanced down at his coat, then at Eli. You said you were headed to an interview. Eli nodded, gently shaking water from his sleeves. Yeah, Hayes Capital Group. It was kind of a big one. Franklin's brows rose, that so Eli didn't notice the shift in tone. He was too busy drying his portfolio with the inside of his coat. It was damp, pages curled. His printed resume had bled slightly at the edges. He sighed. Franklin stepped forward, resting a hand on Eli's shoulder. Let me give you a ride. I can't ask that of you. You didn't, I offered. Franklin opened the driver's side door, got in with more agility than expected, and leaned across to unlock the passenger side. Come on, my son. You're not going to get there faster on foot. Eli stood still for a second. He looked down the street again, through sheets of rain. He thought about the mirrors in the lobby, the receptionist with perfect hair, the boardroom chairs that probably cost more than his car. Then he got in. The drive was quiet at first. Franklin navigated through flooded intersections and flashing stoplights with quiet confidence. His hands still trembled slightly, but his eyes stayed sharp, focused. You said your name's Eli, he asked after a moment. Yep, sir. Where'd you go to school? UNC Charlotte. Business. I graduated last May. Franklin gave a short nod. Not many from UNC make it to Hayes interviews. Eli smiled faintly. Yeah, I know. I'm the odd one out. Franklin glanced over. That a problem for you? Eli shook his head. Not if I get the chance to prove myself. There was something in the way he said it, quiet, measured, not desperate, just honest. Franklin didn't reply right away. He seemed to be studying the traffic. Or maybe Eli. The silence stretched, but it didn't feel uncomfortable. It felt like two people who understood things they didn't say out loud. My wife passed 10 years ago, Franklin said suddenly. No kids nearby. Don't like being driven around. Makes me feel old. I don't think trying to change your own tire in a thunderstorm makes you old, Eli said. Makes you stubborn. Franklin barked a laugh. I'll take that, he said. Better than helpless. They turned onto Tryon Street. The tower came into view. Through the windshield, the building looked like something out of a dream, tall, sharp, powerful. Eli stared at it, knowing he was already too late. 9:26. I appreciate the ride, he said as Franklin pulled to a gentle stop in front of the revolving doors. Good luck in there, Franklin said, putting the car in park. Even if you're late. Eli hesitated. I don't think they'll see me. Franklin's gaze narrowed. Then go make them see you. Eli turned to open the door, then paused. I meant what I said back there, he added softly. About the patch. My dad served. Said if I ever saw a Marine in need, I should stop. No matter where I was going. Franklin said nothing, but his lips pressed together slightly, and he nodded. Eli stepped out into the wet morning, portfolio clutched to his chest. Inside the marble lobby, Eli felt the cold like a punch. The air conditioning hit his soaked clothes, and he couldn't stop shivering. Water dripped from his cuffs. His shoes squeaked against the polished floor. A receptionist looked up. She blinked once. Then again, her eyes scanned him from head to toe, expression unreadable. Good morning, Eli said, voice hoarse. I'm Eli Walker. I had an interview at 9:30. She glanced at the screen. Her voice was polite but firm. I'm sorry, Mr. Walker. You're past your scheduled time. Mr. Crenshaw has already begun seeing other candidates. I understand, Eli replied, but I had a situation. The woman didn't ask what. She didn't need to. She could see it all soaked close. Muddy shoes, streaks of road dirt on his hands. Perhaps you could leave your resume, she offered, and we'll contact you if another opportunity arises. Eli stood there, shoulders slumped. He reached into his portfolio and handed her a damp but intact copy of his resume. Then he paused. Would you mind telling Mr. Crenshaw I came and that I'm sorry for being late? I'll pass it along. He nodded. Thank you. And that was it. No handshake, no eye contact, no second chance. Eli turned and walked away. By the time he reached his apartment, the rain had stopped. The clouds were breaking. The sun peeked through like it hadn't ruined everything just an hour earlier. He sat down on his bed, still in the same soaked clothes. Shoes still wet, tie still tight. His mother had texted twice, asking how it went. He couldn't bring himself to answer. Eli stared at the ceiling. He didn't regret what he'd done. But it still hurt. That job could have changed everything. And all he had in return was a thank you from a tired old man and a ride in a muddy car. But he knew one thing for sure: he'd do it again. 2 days passed. The storm had lifted. But for Eli Walker, the sky still felt gray. He'd done what he believed was right, stopped to help a stranger in need, even if it cost him everything he had worked toward. But that didn't make rent easier, didn't make the silence from Hayes Capital less painful, didn't fill the void left by a dream that had slipped through his hands in the rain. He'd told his mom the truth. She was proud but quiet. Eli knew what that meant. She was worried, just didn't want to show it. He spent the next 2 days scrolling job boards, rewriting cover letters, searching for another shot. But everything felt smaller. None of it carried the weight of what he'd lost. Then on the third morning, his phone rang. An unknown number. Local area code. Eli hesitated before answering. Hello, Mr. Walker, a woman's voice replied. Professional. Warm. This is Rachel from Hayes Capital Group. We'd like to invite you to meet with our executive team this afternoon, if you're available. Eli blinked, stunned. Sorry, did you say Hayes Capital? Yes, sir. Our offices are at 1200 South Tryon. Are you available at 2 p.m. today? Eli swallowed hard. I think there's been a mistake. I already had an interview there. I missed it. There was a pause, then the voice returned, calm and certain. Your name is Eli Walker? Correct, yes. Then there's no mistake. Mr. Hayes asked to meet with you directly. Eli's heart caught. Mr. Hayes. Yes, sir? The CEO. Another pause. I'll be there. At 1:50, Eli stood in front of the building he thought he'd never walk into again. This time, the sky was clear, his suit was dry, his shoes polished again, carefully, but the nerves, those were real. He stepped through the glass doors and gave his name to the front desk. The receptionist checked a list and smiled politely. Mr. Hayes will see you on the 38th floor. Take the executive elevator to your left. Eli nodded, confused but quiet. The elevator ride felt endless. He adjusted his tie 3 times on the way up. When the doors opened, he stepped into a suite unlike anything he'd ever seen. Quiet, tasteful, a city skyline visible through floor-to-ceiling windows. He was greeted by a woman in a gray suit, Rachel. He assumed, right this way, Mr. Walker. She led him down a polished corridor. At the end was a set of double doors. She opened one side and stepped back. He's expecting you. Eli stepped inside. At first, he didn't see anyone. Then, from behind a wide desk at the far end of the room, a man stood, mid-40s, crisp suit, quiet confidence in the way he moved. He looked like someone used to making decisions that carried weight. Mr. Walker, the man said, walking forward and extending a hand. I'm Andrew Hayes. Eli shook the hand. stunned. "Sir, I don't understand. I thought—" Before he could finish, a voice interrupted gently from the far corner. "You thought the story ended 2 days ago." Eli turned. In a soft leather chair, seated by the window with sunlight on his shoulder, was Franklin Hayes, the old man, the Marine, the stranger in the storm. He was smiling. Eli froze. What are you doing here?" he asked before he could stop himself. Franklin chuckled softly. "Not the question you should be asking. Son?" Andrew gestured toward the chair in front of his desk. "Have a seat." Eli, still stunned. Eli sat. Andrew remained standing, his tone even. "My father rarely calls me, even when it's important." Franklin raised an eyebrow in agreement. "That's true," Andrew continued. "But 2 days ago, in the middle of a board meeting, my phone rang. It was him. And all he said was—" Andrew looked Eli straight in the eye. "You need to meet this young man. Don't let the world overlook someone like that." Eli's throat tightened. He glanced toward Franklin, who simply nodded once. "I didn't know who he was," Eli said quietly. "I swear, I just saw the patch." "I know," Franklin said. "That's why it mattered." Andrew leaned back slightly against the desk, arms crossed. "My father founded this firm with my grandfather, and he's been the moral compass behind every decision we've made, whether the world knows it or not." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "3 times in my life, he's told me to hire someone without looking at their resume. This is the third." Eli couldn't speak. Franklin finally broke the silence. "I wasn't looking for a job application that day," he said softly, "but I found something better." Eli's voice came out, barely above a whisper. "What was that?" Franklin smiled. "A man who didn't flinch when no one was watching, who ruined his best clothes, missed his biggest opportunity, and never once asked if it was worth it." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I don't need the best financial analyst, Eli. I need the right kind of person, and so does this firm." Eli looked down at his hands. They were still calloused from that morning, still a little stained, even after scrubbing. I thought I failed," he said quietly. "No," Andrew replied. "You passed a test none of the other candidates even saw coming." He walked back around to his desk and picked up a folder. "This isn't just a courtesy meeting. We're offering you a position entry level. Yes, but with mentorship from our top directors and access to leadership you wouldn't get anywhere else." Eli stared at him. "Why me?" Andrew looked at his father. Franklin answered, "Because someday, this company will be run by people who've been tested not just in the markets, but in the rain." Eli said yes. He didn't need time to think it over, didn't ask for details, didn't negotiate, because for the first time in his life, someone had seen him for who he was, not for where he went to school, not for who he knew, not for what he wore, but for the kind of man he chose to be when no one was watching. Andrew Hayes extended a hand across the desk. "We'll have you start next Monday. Orientation short. After that, you'll work directly with me, assistant to the director." Eli blinked. "I thought this was for a junior analyst role." Andrew shook his head. "Not anymore. You'll sit in on high-level meetings, research projects. You'll learn fast, but I have a feeling you're built for it." Franklin Hayes, still sitting quietly by the window, gave a single approving nod. Eli stood. His hands were steady now, and for the first time since graduation, he believed something new, that maybe all the closed doors in his life weren't dead ends. Maybe they were just turns. Monday morning, the sun rose soft over Charlotte. Eli stepped out of the elevator into the lobby of Hayes Capital, this time not as a hopeful candidate, but as a full-time employee. His shoes didn't squeak today. His suit fit better, newly pressed, paid for with his signing bonus. His shoulders were straighter, and standing outside the glass doors waiting to greet him was Franklin Hayes. "Didn't think I'd let you walk in alone, did you?" the old man asked with a grin. Eli smiled. "You didn't have to come." Franklin shrugged, adjusting his tie. "You didn't have to stop on that street either." But here we are. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something folded a patch, frayed at the edges. Marine Corps insignia, just like the one on his coat the day they met. This one's yours now, he said, handing it to Eli. You earned it. Eli took it in both hands. The weight of it wasn't physical, but it was real. Thank you, sir. Go make us proud. Eli stepped through the doors, upstairs. The day moved quickly. Orientation, introductions, a desk with his name already printed on a brass plate. Rachel handed him a laptop, a phone, and a packet of onboarding materials. But the most surprising moment came mid-morning. A meeting scheduled with the Strategic Analysis Division. Topic: distressed assets in emerging markets. As Eli walked into the room, he froze. Three of the people sitting around the conference table were the same team who'd interviewed candidates the day he missed his slot. Polished, professional, smart, and clearly a surprise to see him. Their eyes flicked between him and Andrew Hayes, who was standing at the front of the room, pouring coffee. Andrew saw their confusion and said nothing, just smiled. Eli took a seat near the back, quiet, observant. The meeting began. Charts, spreadsheets, projections. Terms flew across the room: risk distribution, cost of capital, yield volatility. He understood them, but he also felt something else, something missing. Finally, Andrew glanced across the table. Eli, you've reviewed the proposal. Any thoughts? Heads turned, some skeptical, some curious. Eli cleared his throat. Yes, sir. I know the data says this region is high risk, but he paused, then continued. I spent summers working in a garage. Places like the ones we're looking at now, they don't operate like a balance sheet. They survive because people believe the next day might be better than the last. If we walk in and strip assets without understanding the community we're entering, we're not just risking money, we're risking the company's name. The room fell quiet. One of the senior analysts spoke up, a touch dismissive, and your recommendation would be. Eli looked directly at Andrew. Partnership, not extraction. Start with infrastructure support, offer stability first, then scale. Andrew didn't respond immediately. He turned toward the window, then looked back at the group. We don't just need brains in this room, he said quietly. We need heart. Then he looked at Eli. Thank you. And just like that, the tone of the room shifted, not because Eli had outsmarted anyone, but because he had reminded them what this company was built on. In the weeks that followed, Eli settled into a rhythm, long hours, high expectations. But with every passing day, he found a new kind of confidence, not in being perfect, but in being real. He studied the markets, wrote memos, traveled with Andrew to 2 conferences. He even joined Franklin once a week for lunch. They didn't always talk about work. Sometimes it was about life, the core, sometimes just about the rain. Funny thing, Franklin said once, over coffee. You stopped for an old man that day. But truth is, I think I stopped for you too. Eli smiled. What do you mean? Franklin leaned back. I'd gotten used to thinking no one looked out for each other anymore. That kindness didn't count. You reminded me otherwise. One morning, 3 months in, Eli stood at the front of a staff seminar, his first time presenting. Andrew watched from the side. Franklin wasn't there that day, doctor's appointment. He said, but he sent a message beforehand. Say it your way, son. No suit speak. Eli took a deep breath, then began. Numbers tell a story, but they don't tell your story. They don't show the morning you were late because you stopped to help someone. They don't show the nights your mom worked double shifts just so you could go to college. They don't show the kind of person you become when no one's grading you. He paused. And if we forget that, then all we've built here doesn't mean much. The room was silent. Then came the applause. Andrew didn't say much after. Just clapped Eli on the back. Once. That, he said quietly, was the best use of 15 minutes I've seen in a long time. Eli never forgot what that week had cost him, but more importantly, he never forgot what it gave him. A reminder that character matters, that someone is always watching, not to judge you, but to see if you're worth betting on. Sometimes it's a stranger with a flat tire. Sometimes it's a CEO in disguise. One good deed is never wasted. You never know who's watching or what door is opening because of what you did when no one saw. In our darkest moments, kindness still finds a way, often in the quietest places. Not everyone who helps wants recognition. Some just need to know that today, someone isn't going hungry. And sometimes, that alone is enough to change a life. You may forget the story, but if no one retells it, history stays silent forever. Subscribe to Grateful Stories, where justice is honored, kindness is remembered, and no act of quiet heroism is ever lost.